Israel bombs Gaza City neighborhood by neighborhood as Iran denies it had any involvement in the surprise attacks by Hamas.
EU Foreign Policy Chief says more aid to Gaza is needed.
Finland's Prime Minister has said external activity rather than normal use caused a leak in the subsea gas pipeline connecting his country to Estonia. Israeli warplanes hammered the Gaza Strip neighborhood by neighborhood on Tuesday, reducing buildings to rubble and sending people scrambling to find safety. Israel's retaliation for Hamas's surprise weekend attack. 4 days of fighting, at least 1,600 deaths on both sides. Aid agencies have pleaded for the creation of humanitarian corridors to Gaza.
The imposition of sieges that endanger the lives of civilians by depriving them of goods essential for their survival is prohibited under international humanitarian law.
A humanitarian corridor is needed to reach people with critical medical supplies, and WHO will work with partners on this.
Israeli soldiers in the north have again been targeted by rockets from over the border in Lebanon and have responded with artillery fire. Iran's denied being behind the Hamas attacks.
ما پیشانی و بازوی طراحان مدبر و هوشمند و جوانان شجاع فلسطین رو میبوسیم.
2 military flights bring Italian citizens back from Israel, and Montenegro evacuated 50 of its citizens. The violence has triggered an exodus of 200,000 people.
The EU Foreign Policy Chief, Josep Borrell, says cutting off water and gas to Gaza was not in line with international law after Israel declared this as part of its response to Hamas's major terrorist attack on Saturday, where hundreds of Israeli civilians were killed. EU Foreign Affairs Ministers attended an emergency meeting to discuss the bloc's response. Foreign Affairs Ministers of Israel and the Palestinian Authority were invited to attend, but neither could agree to being there. The EU's Foreign Policy Chief says Gaza needs more aid.
The fact is that at that moment the casualties in Gaza are also increasing. 150,000 people are internally displaced and the humanitarian situation is dire, so we will have to support more, not less, more.
According to sources, there was high tension in the meeting following a tweet on Monday from Hungarian EU Commissioner Oliver Varhelyi unilaterally announcing an end to Palestinian development aid. He was rebuked by several member states such as Ireland, Luxembourg, Spain and Belgium, who said he had no authority to do so. President of the European Commission Ursula von der Leyen has also been unequivocal in her support for Israel.
She has been quite an accomplice in sustaining this extremely strong stance of basically saying, well, the Israeli government has been attacked, the Israeli territories have been attacked, they have a right to defend themselves, and this right basically would not encounter any limitations, not even by humanitarian law. And this seems to be in conflict with the values underlying the European Union, Article 2 values that we often preach around the world.
EU emergency aid to Palestine has not been suspended, but some development aid is now under review. Josep Borrell says the vast majority of EU countries support continuing aid to Palestine. Shona Murray, Euronews, Brussels.
As the tanks roll and the bullets and rockets fly in a week of almost unprecedented conflict between Israel and Hamas, there's no light at the end of the tunnel for people living in the area. Diplomacy seems to have failed them for decades, with experts pessimistic about solutions to stabilise the region in the short term.
I don't think either side has appetite to end fighting at this moment in time. And I think going back to how the situation was prior to this fighting will not be an option for either side.
Any possible solution will necessarily involve international mediators, not just the European Union and the United States, but also regional powers in the Middle East itself.
When we talk about mediating, we talk about mediating now in terms of how to reduce violence, reduce humanitarian suffering. Certainly Egypt and I presume Qatar are playing important roles in this regard because of their ability to to talk to both sides, both Israel and Hamas.
You need the United States, you need the European Union, but definitely you need the regional powers, Egypt, Jordan, the UAE, Morocco, Bahrain. But you need also new players. And let's not forget, Saudi Arabia put on the table in 2002 the Saudi initiative that was translated into the Beirut Declaration for peace in exchange of, or normalization for exchange of full peace with the Palestinians. I think this is still there on the table.
The ascent of hardliners on both sides of the conflict happened with few checks from Brussels or Washington.
Israel has been entrenching its occupation, moving towards formal annexation of Palestinian territory, and entrenching what is increasingly described as apartheid. There has been very little reaction from the European Union, from the European governments, from the US about this issue.
This has been neglected and abandoned for years when this situation was festering. And we need to think what context, what condition empowered the most extreme in the region or in this conflict, instead of trying to empower those who want to live in peace.
Engineers and security experts in Finland are investigating a leak in the Baltic Connector subsea pipeline that brings natural gas into the country from Estonia. It's been shut down since a sudden drop in pressure on Sunday.
Tieto siitä, että Rajavartiolaitos ja Merivartiosto ovat löytäneet putken vuotokohdan, saatiin tänä aamuna. Vuotokohta sijaitsee Suomen talousalueella. Alustavan arvion mukaan havaittu vaurio ei ole voinut syntyä putken tavanomaisen käytön tai paineenvaihtelun seurauksena. On todennäköistä, että vauriot ovat seurausta ulkopuolisesta toiminnasta.
Although Finland hasn't speculated publicly on who or what may be behind the external activity, it is sharing information with NATO. Finland halted imports of natural gas from Russia in 2022, switching to the Baltic Connector and LNG.
Ukraine's prime minister said around 6 million people in the country are threatened by mines and thousands may be killed or injured. According to Ukraine's interior minister, nearly 1/3 of Ukraine's territory had been mined since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion. The Institute for the Study of War says Russian forces are now intensifying mining efforts in the Robotine-Verbove area and seek to fix Ukrainian forces on areas of the front away from western Zaporizhia region. Russian news bloggers claim that Russian forces have begun remining previously cleared areas on the Robotine and Verbove line in this areas, which is south from Orikhiv, to achieve tactical surprise, trying to disrupt the movement of heavy Ukrainian cargo and equipment in these areas in recent days. Meanwhile, both Russian and Ukrainian sources reported that deteriorating weather conditions are impacting both Russian and Ukrainian operations across the theater. Ukrainian Tavrisk Group of Forces spokesperson Colonel Alexander Stupin stated that Russian drone and aviation activity has decreased in the past few days here in the south due to poor weather. Russian bloggers claim that deteriorating weather conditions in the Bakhmut and Zaporizhia directions are impacting Ukrainian offensive operations as well as Russian aerial reconnaissance operations. Ukrainian Eastern Group of Forces spokesperson Captain Ilya Yevlash reiterated that poor weather may impact drone and aviation operations, but that the weather will not halt Ukraine's counteroffensive.
There's a downbeat forecast on economic growth for the Eurozone today from the annual assembly of the International Monetary Fund and World Bank in Marrakesh. The IMF chief economist lowered expected growth in the bloc to 0.7% this year and 1.2% in 2024, both lower than forecasts issued last June. As always, context explains a lot.
What we're seeing in the euro area is we're seeing a lot of support was put in place during the pandemic, during the energy crisis. The energy crisis prices have been coming down, the pandemic is behind us. So a lot of that support is being withdrawn. And as a result, fiscal policy is becoming more neutral or even a little bit contractionary.
Contraction of 0.5% forecast for Germany this year. Global economists are concerned by a real estate crisis in China, where 100 million homes are said to stand empty. Economists still expect 5% growth in China this year.
2 weeks after announcing that Russia would be readmitted to European under-17 competitions, UEFA has backtracked. European football's governing body, which had previously stated its belief that these children shouldn't be punished, revealed on Tuesday that the agenda point was withdrawn as no technical solution could be found. The FIFA Council had also approved the return of Russian teams to its competitions last week, but that decision is now effectively rendered redundant as the European competitions act as the qualification pathway to the global events. UEFA has confirmed that the United Kingdom and Ireland will host the 2028 European Championship. The Executive Committee's decision was a formality after Turkey withdrew to focus on its joint bid with Italy for Euro 2032, which was also confirmed at a meeting in Switzerland. Whilst co-hosting usually means automatic qualification, UEFA's guidelines state that there are no such guarantees when there are more than 2 joint hosts. The Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland and Wales have never hosted a major football tournament before. The event is projected to generate around €3 billion, and according to reports, Cardiff's Principality Stadium will host the opening match, with the final taking place at Wembley Stadium.